Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the Brand Marketing Show. I'm your host, Kath Langman, and by the time this episode goes to air, I will have just come back from helping some of my clients exhibit at the Reed Gift Fair in Sydney. I am recording this before I travel though, and I'm really hoping that I will have met some of you lovely listeners there. I know I'll definitely be meeting a few of our clients there. But if I did meet some of your listeners there, I'm sure that will have been really fun for us to meet in person, and I definitely hope it will have been a great show for you. You know, for me, for someone like me, meeting customers via an in-person channel like a trade show or an expo is always such a novelty. Because, my bread and butter, of course, is digital channels like Meta and Google. And that is quite a nice wee little segue into the topic of this week's episode because the statistics have just come out on the state of social media in 2026. So every year there's a market research company called Meltwater who surveys over 1,500 marketers worldwide about what they are doing with social media. And every year, the herd typically moves in the same direction. And this year, they are apparently all stampeding toward Instagram and TikTok. And Reddit has also had a 63% surge in usage. When I read that statistic, for me, it was like, everyone's excited about the platforms that feel like they're going somewhere. I mean, not that Reddit is all that new, but it's certainly taken off as an ad platform. And Facebook, Facebook has officially been dumped. It's 2026 least loved platform. How about that? Around 30% of marketers are actively reducing their efforts on Facebook, and the collective breakup is happening in real time as I speak. If you've been at any conference, marketing conference, or networking even online in marketing groups, you probably know the vibe. Nobody really wants to talk about Facebook, or if they do, it's to complain. It's the platform everyone's embarrassed to admit they still use, and it's almost a little bit like admitting you still have a DVD collection. Not as cool as having a vinyl collection, is it? Anyway, there's just one small problem with this mass exodus. The data doesn't support it. Facebook's ad reach actually grew by 5.7% year on year. Its potential ad audience, a casual 2.35 billion people, and 53% of consumers still use it to research brands before they're buying. So let me get this straight. A platform where the audience is growing, the reach is increasing, and more than half the users are actively shopping around and businesses are leaving, something just doesn't add up there. So either 30% of marketers know something the data doesn't, or 30% of the marketers are making a decision that has nothing to do with what actually works, which of course is not strategy. That's a herd mentality pretending to be strategy. So today I want to unpack why marketers might really be leaving Facebook, which one of those three reasons is actually legitimate and which is just noise, and why this exodus might be the biggest opportunity that you'll see as a brand owner and an e-commerce business owner, at least for this year. Because I do think that there is a real danger in just following the crowd here. I know the marketing industry has a tendency to move as a herd, everyone chasing the same platforms, the same tactics, the same trends. And when the herd moves, it often creates an opportunity for those who are willing to go in the opposite direction. So let's start with what the survey actually says versus what the performance data shows, because there is a really fascinating disconnect. According to the Meltwater report, Facebook and X are the two platforms companies plan to spend the least time on in 2026. I can totally understand that about X. It is a little bit of a cesspit in terms of a platform these days. But, sticking to what the survey says, Instagram jumped to number one priority for paid social. TikTok moved from third to second, and Reddit usage is up 63%, which, the shift is really dramatic. In just a few years, Facebook has gone from the default advertising platform, online advertising platform, to the one that marketers are now actively avoiding. If you only looked at these survey results, you would be forgiven for thinking Facebook was dying. But here's what the actual performance data shows. Facebook's ad reach has increased 5.7% year on year. It has 2.35 billion in potential ad audience. That's second only to YouTube. 53% of consumers use Facebook still in 2026 to research brands before purchasing. And globally, 72% of internet users use social media for brand research. So let's let those figures sink in for a minute. More than half of consumers, 53%, are using Facebook specifically to research brands before they buy. That's not people just mindlessly scrolling past cat videos. That's active, intentional shopping behavior. Even Meltwater themselves flag this in their report. They write, before continuing to deprioritize Facebook, businesses should consider the fact that the platform has actually seen a 5.7% increase in reported ad reach year on year. So the research company publishing the survey is essentially saying, hey, we know everyone's leaving, but the numbers suggest that might be a mistake, which raises the question, if data supports anything, supports staying, why is everyone leaving? What's driving this exodus? And so I spent a little bit of time thinking about this over the last few days and talking to my team and watching what's happening in, within our client base and within our audience. And I have identified 3 distinct reasons why I believe marketers are walking away from a platform that's demonstrably still performing. And from what I can see, 2 of these are bad reasons. One is legitimate but solvable. So let's dive in and break them down. And the first reason that marketers are leaving has nothing to do with performance data. It's pretty much psychological, it's emotional, and it's the irresistible pull of the new. And, every year there's a new something that everyone's excited about, whether it's a new platform everyone's talking about or, things, maybe case studies are getting shared on LinkedIn, or the hot takes about where you need to be is TikTok, or, this year it might be Reddit with that 63% surge. And, in some respects, I can kind of understand that, seeing as, Reddit and Google have stitched up a deal to, for Google to source Reddit threads for their large language model. TikTok, of course, jumping to second priority. I mean, they're newish as far as advertising online goes, and relatively exciting. They feel more like the future, perhaps, compared to Facebook ads or Facebook content. Whereas Facebook, by comparison, does feel old now. I mean, it's been around since 2004. And it's where, maybe your parents or your grandparents post photos of their garden or whatever is going on in their lives. It doesn't necessarily feel cutting edge. It doesn't necessarily make for exciting, presentations or whatnot. And I guess here's the thing though about shiny new objects. New platforms have less proven playbooks. They have smaller audiences. So Reddit has 765 million reach, which is not small, but it is a lot smaller than Facebook's 2.35 billion reach or users. And they often require completely different content strategies as well. So you have to learn from scratch with a new platform while your competitors on the established platforms are optimizing what already works. And we've seen this pattern before. I mean, the such and such is dead prediction cycle happens pretty often. Email is dead. We heard that through the 2010s. Meanwhile, of course, email consistently delivers the highest ROI of any marketing channel. SEO is dead when social media first took off. Like, why bother with Google if you can just post on Facebook? I mean, how ironic. Facebook is dead, has been said every year since probably about 2015. The platforms declared dead, though, really actually die. The marketers who leave just create more room for those who stay. And I remember when everyone was convinced that Snapchat was going to kill Instagram, and then Instagram, of course, launched stories, and that narrative died pretty quickly. I remember when Clubhouse was supposed to revolutionize everything, everyone was scrambling to build audio strategies. I mean, where's Clubhouse now? And probably many of you have never even heard of it. The shiny object gets crowded pretty fast. Everyone piles in, the early advantage disappears, and suddenly you are competing in an unfamiliar space against people who also don't know what they're doing. Meanwhile, the boring platform gets quieter and the people who stayed have more room to breathe. Or, quite frankly, the boring platform innovates and becomes new and fresh again. But there's a reason Warren Buffett's famous advice is to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Because while everyone's scrambling to figure out the new platforms, the brands staying on Facebook have less competition and more runway. Here's the second reason, though, that I think this exodus is happening, and it's one that does kind of get under my skin a little bit because it sounds like insight, but it's actually just assumption. It's the I don't use Facebook myself, therefore my customers don't either. Or nobody I know is on Facebook, or Facebook is for old people, or my feed is just full of ads and weird political stuff. I mean, this is personal experience masquerading as market research, and it can be dangerous for your business. Your personal social media habits, that's not data. And your friend group is probably not a representative sample either. The demographics of who you are is not always the demographics of who your customers are. And let me give you a bit of a reality check here anyway, because Facebook's largest user base is actually 25 to 44-year-olds. In Australia, Facebook still has higher reach than Instagram in all age brackets above 35. And for premium e-commerce brands who are targeting, people with some disposable income, which would fall into that demographic, Facebook is exactly where your customer is. So you might be a 28-year-old social media manager not using Facebook, but that does not mean that the 40-year-old customer isn't scrolling it every single day. And I do see this constantly with clients and with people in our audience and just brand owners anywhere and everywhere. It might be the founder saying something like, I'm not really on Facebook anymore, and I have to gently point out that they are not their customer. Their customer is a different person with different habits at a different stage of life. And the founder's scrolling behavior on a Sunday night is going to be completely irrelevant to where their ideal customer is spending time. And look, we see the same exact pattern with email. It's the whole, I don't read marketing emails, so email marketing must be dead. Meanwhile, email still drives 36 times ROI on average. And so the channel you personally ignore might be the channel that your customer relies on. And so the question to ask is not, do I use this platform? It's, do my customers use this platform? And if the answer is yes, does it really matter whether you personally find it engaging? I think making channel decisions based on your own scrolling habits instead of our customers' behavior is one of the fastest ways to make really expensive mistakes. And honestly, I do think it's a form of laziness dressed up as insight because actual market research can be a little harder and more time consuming. Surveying your customers takes time, analyzing data takes effort. But saying, I don't use Facebook, so let's deprioritize it, feels like a decision based on knowledge, but it's not. It's a guess based on personal preference. Now, let's talk about the third reason. And unlike the first two, this one is legitimate, I believe. And that is that Meta has genuinely made things harder. Marketers aren't imagining this, business owners aren't imagining this. The frustration really is real here. And, part of it's the Andromeda algorithm update that definitely destabilized performance for basically everyone last year. media buyers across the globe, were refreshing their dashboards and probably questioning their career choices because what was working stopped working suddenly overnight, and the rules changed mid-game with absolutely no warning, which is, of course, how Meta likes to do things. And then there's Meta's AI optimizations of creative. And yes, I'm using air quotes around optimization because the results have been pretty questionable at best. We've seen Meta's AI automatically improve, in their eyes, some pretty carefully crafted creative by just in the most ridiculous way, like magically teleporting random people into the middle of the ocean, or taking two people who were riding horses and sticking them backwards on a park bench, or plonking complete strangers into scenes where they just definitely don't belong, as our lead media buyers' words were last year when all of this started going skew-if. Meta is drunk and needs to go home, and sometimes she's not wrong. Because, creative that takes maybe hours to develop, carefully crafted to match brand guidelines or with specific messaging for a specific audience, is just being butchered by an algorithm that thinks it knows better. And the worst part is you often even don't know it's happening because Meta's pretty sneaky sometimes, and it just kind of automatically changes these settings in the back end. I think what marketers are feeling is a profound loss of control. The platform is changing under their feet. They're being forced to trust an AI that demonstrably makes things worse. And the thing that they were good at, crafting campaigns, creating compelling creative, now feels often like you're fighting the machine. And this frustration, it's valid, it's not shiny object syndrome, it's not personal bias, it's a real structural change that has genuinely made the platform harder to work with. But what I want to be really clear about is this: if you're frustrated with Meta right now, you're not wrong. The platform has become more difficult. The AI does do weird things. The control you used to have is gone. And these aren't excuses that people make because they're bad at their jobs. These are real changes that have made real impacts. But here's the critical thing to understand. Everyone is having the same experience. Every brand, every media buyer, every agency. The chaos is universal, which means the question isn't whether Meta is chaotic. It is. The question is what you do about it. So if Meta is chaotic for you, it's chaotic for everyone. And if your competitors are frustrated and they're leaving, and if they're leaving, there's less competition, and less competition means lower costs, better placements, and more reach for your budget. I mean, if you think about it like a gym membership, everyone signs up in January full of motivation and full of good intention. And then by February, most of them have quit and the gym is empty and the equipment's all yours. So Facebook in 2026 is like the February gym. The advertisers who rage quit in frustration are clearing out. The auction is less competitive. The people still there are more committed. Yes, but there are fewer of them. And for brands willing to learn and adapt, that's a bit of a gift. So I think there are two types of responses to difficulty. Response A is, this is hard, I'm out. Or response B, this is hard, which means my competitors will quit and I'll have the lane to myself. The brands choosing response B are going to clean up. And so I want you to look at what the data is actually showing. If reach is up despite the chaos, the audience is growing despite the complaints, the costs are dropping in many categories because advertisers are leaving. So the economics are actually improving for those who stay. It's counterintuitive, but the worse the experience gets for most marketers, the better the opportunity becomes for the ones who stay and figure it out. Less competition doesn't just mean lower costs. It means your ads are more likely to be seen, more likely to stand out, and more likely to convert. I think the winners in chaos are the ones who learn to navigate it and to not panic during it, who figure out how to work with the algorithm or around it, who don't rage quit when things get hard, who understand that difficulty creates barriers to entry and barriers to entry create competitive advantage. And I think this connects to what we talked about in the last episode, chasing a new platform because you hope it'll be Easier is just another version of looking for the silver bullet. It's hoping there's somewhere you can go where the work isn't required. Spoiler alert, there isn't such a place. Every platform is going to have its challenges. TikTok's algorithm is a mystery. Instagram's reach is declining for many brands. Reddit requires a completely different content approach. LinkedIn, for those of you who have a B2B audience, is pay to play for organic reach. The grass is not going to be greener. It's just different grass with different weeds, to use another gardening analogy. And the brands that thrive aren't the ones who find the easy platform. They're the ones who get good at navigating hard platforms while the competitors give up. So if you are going to stay, which I think you should seriously consider, what does navigating this chaos actually look like? How do you work with a platform that feels like it's working against you? And I want to give you some practical strategies, not just some motivation, because stay and figure it out isn't, it's not particularly helpful if you don't know what figuring it out looks like. And of course, the first is that, everyone just needs to accept that the reality is that it's, it's a new reality. The days of total control have been over for some time. You really can't fight the algorithm. You can only work with it. And I think resistance is exhausting and unproductive anyway, and that acceptance is the first step to adaptation. Golly gosh, I'm starting to sound like a counsellor here. But to be honest, maybe we all need to be part psychologist anyway when we're working with social media content. Anyway, I think the second thing, though, is to feed the algorithm what it needs. And Meta's algorithm does run on signal, so engagement data, website behavior, email engagement, customer information, brand mentions in as many places as you can get them, whether it's word of mouth or PR or other platforms as well. The more signal that you can feed it, the better it performs. And this is why brands with a really strong, multi-channel marketing ecosystem outperform brands relying only on ads on one channel. So your organic content, your email list, your website activity, all of the other marketing that you do, all of it helps to feed the machine. And we did talk about this in the last episode as well. So if you're not going to feed your ad algorithm fresh signal through organic engagement and other owned channel activity, it's going to run out of the warm audiences faster. And then the brands that maintain their strong ad performance are the ones feeding that ecosystem and not just running ads in isolation. But third is the necessary shift from creative perfection to creative volume, because the algorithm wants to test. This is how it works. So the more differentiated variations means more data, means better optimization. So you have to stop treating every ad like a masterpiece that takes weeks to produce. You have to stop trying to, or, insist that all your ads look and sound the same. You have to treat creative almost like ammunition. You need lots of it, and you need to be willing to let the data tell you what's working. And this is a big mindset shift for a lot of brands, particularly if you've invested in really stunning photography, really carefully crafted copy, perfect brand consistency across every piece of creative. And now, of course, I'm telling you to produce more, produce faster, and let the algorithm pick winners, which does kind of feel a bit wrong, particularly for those like me who've been in marketing for decades. But it's how the platform works now. Perfection at low volume loses to good enough at high volume. And then fourth, you have to work around the AI where you can. I mean, you've got to test what happens with AI tools on versus off, and be really explicit in your campaign settings. Some placements and optimizations can certainly be disabled, but you have to know which controls you still have and use them intentionally. And there's a learning curve here. Meta is going to keep adding new AI features, some of which are going to be helpful and some of which are going to be the opposite. Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, for example, might work brilliantly for some brands and terribly for others. And the AI creative tools that save time or destroy your brand consistency. You have to test, you have to document what works, you have to be willing to turn things off when they're not helping, and you have to constantly keep an eye on it. So, the fifth step, being monitoring more aggressively than ever is super important. You want to be checking campaigns a lot more frequently. You want to catch when the AI does something insane before it burns your budget. Build review checkpoints into your daily workflow. This should never have been a set and forget environment, but if anything, now it requires more attention, not less. And I know that sounds exhausting, but here's the thing. If you're already doing the work to maintain your marketing ecosystem, this is just part of that work. It's not extra, it's just essential across the board. And the brands unwilling to do this level of monitoring are the ones leaving, which again creates opportunity for you. And then finally, focus on what you can control. Things like your landing page experience, your email follow-up, your post-purchase journey, your organic content, and then, your overall ecosystem. The ad is just the front door. You can control everything else that happens after someone walks through it. The less control Meta gives you over the ads themselves, the more important it becomes to optimize everything around the ads. If you can't control how the algorithm targets or what it does to your creative, make sure that when someone does click, they land somewhere that converts brilliantly. Make sure your emails are so good that it doesn't matter if the initial acquisition cost is higher. Make sure your customer experience drives repeat purchases so that you can afford to lower first order margin. And then, the bigger lesson, I think there's always this bigger important point in all of this kind of chaos, and it applies whether you are on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or any other platform, any other social media platform, or search platform for that matter. You don't own any of those platforms, and you certainly don't own any of the audience that you're talking to on those platforms. These algorithm changes, they can destroy reach overnight. Policy changes can shut down your account. You're essentially renting access to someone else's audience, and the landlord can change the terms whenever they want. The brands least hurt by the Andromeda chaos were the ones with strong owned audiences, email lists that actually engage, website traffic from multiple sources, customer data that doesn't depend entirely on Meta's pixel. When the algorithm went haywire, they had other channels to lean on. And when the targeting got less reliable, they had first-party data to fall back on. When costs spiked on one platform, they had things like organic traffic and email revenue to cushion the blow. The brands, of course, that were 100% dependent on something like Facebook ads or Instagram ads, they're going to be feeling every tremor of the earthquake with no buffer, no backup, and no resilience. So the smart play isn't to abandon Facebook, it's to use Facebook while it's working and while it's underpriced. But make sure that you capture that value into channels that you do control. Every person who clicks on your ad should land somewhere that captures their email or potentially can capture their email. Every customer should enter a nurture sequence that builds the relationship independent of any other platform. And every sale should be feeding your first party data. So you want to think of Facebook as the top of the funnel, not the whole funnel. It's where you find new people, but the moment they engage, your job is to move them into channels that you own. It's the in, off, own, step-by-step process, so onto your email list, maybe your SMS list, fingers crossed, your customer database, places where the Meta algorithm or any other algorithm are not going to change or cut off your access. And that way, when the next algorithm earthquake hits, there will be another one at some stage. You will not be starting from zero. You will have assets that no platform can actually take away. Now, to make this even a little bit more practical, what should you actually do based on your situation? I mean, if Facebook is currently working for you, definitely stay, double down, enjoy the reduced competition while everyone else is distracted by shiny objects, but maintain and optimize, of course. Don't set and forget. If Facebook has been declining for you, you want to ask why. Is it actually the platform or is it your ecosystem? Is your creative stale? Is your landing page outdated? Are your email flows ancient? Don't necessarily blame the platform for problems that might exist elsewhere in your funnel. I've lost count of how many brands have told me that Facebook doesn't work for us when the real issue wasn't the ads. It was something else, like the website that they're directing those ads to that hasn't been updated in years, or maybe never optimized, or they don't have any email flows to support the cold traffics that they're sending to that website. If an ad is getting the click, everything after the click needs to help you get that sale. Now, if you've already left Facebook as an ad channel, maybe do consider coming back with fresh eyes, because the landscape has changed. Fewer competitors, potentially better economics. Obviously, if this is what you've done, maybe test small before you commit big budgets, but don't necessarily write it off based on what was true last year. And for everyone, regardless of where you're at, make sure you make your decisions based on your data and not some trend that you might be observing others make in the marketplace. Your customers aren't a survey of 1,500 marketers, so you want to test, measure, and then decide. And whatever you do, capture value into channels that you own. If you are feeling the meta chaos and you are not sure what to do with it, or if you're wondering whether to stay or leave or come back, if you want someone else to look at your actual data and help you to figure out a straight answer, then I would absolutely love to invite you to book a brand growth strategy session with us. This is not a sales pitch dressed up as a consultation. It's an actual strategic conversation about where you are and where you could be and what steps and strategies it'll take to help you get from A to B. So, and of course, my passion is to help every brand owner to build and optimize that marketing ecosystem that isn't going to crumble every time a single platform changes their algorithm. And, I've been doing this for a long time now, and I have helped many, many clients navigate those kinds of changes in their marketing over many years. So I would love to help you to build a growth strategy around premium brand positioning and not just getting more traffic and hoping for the best. So if you want to book one of those in, just head to productpreneurmarketing.com/let's-talk, or just head to our website or the podcast show notes page and you'll find a link from there. That is it for today's episode, though. And I really hope that you take a little bit of maybe some inspiration, but also just pause to reflect on the reasons why. Why do we make changes to what we do? Are we following the crowd or looking for a shiny object, or are we doing the research or analyzing what's going on for ourselves and then making an informed decision? And so hopefully what I've had to say today has given you pause to think about these things in your own business. You probably know someone else in business who might be needing to hear this message as well. And if that's the case, I would love to invite you to share it with them, share this episode with them. And other than that, though, as always, I look forward to being in your ears again next week on the show. And until then, I'm Kath Langman from Productpreneur Marketing. Bye for now.